But why don't you call the president? Kiss and make up.
I will as soon as he starts keeping, a single one of his promises on immigration.
Oh, all right.
Well, that was easy. If you could talk to him, it'd really be doing us all a solid. And in case I haven't said this before, I am going to become a broken record on this in defense of not only me, but all of us who voted for Trump, because some of the never-Trumpers, needless to say, are sneering and laughing and ha-ha like they knew. No, they didn't know. And we certainly didn't know in an area far more complicated than building a wall or deporting following the law, deporting illegals and enforcing the welfare ban on immigrants, that sort of thing. The judiciary, he's been magnificent. Why? Because he farmed it out. He's not farming this out to the people who could get it done. He doesn't seem to be trying to get it done. He has all Koch brothers, open borders shills working for him in the White House. Other than Stephen Miller, there isn't a single person in any top administration position who supports the MAGA agenda.
All right. Well, that may be true, but it's not like he's sitting around doing nothing. It's not like he's Obama in the gym all day. He does have stuff going on. I mean, he's under assault from 50 different directions, including Mueller and Nadler, all this stuff.
Well, the best way to fight back to all of this is to keep his promises. I mean, why is he under this assault? Why was he the only Republican, not only in 2016, but every 4 years for your and my lifetimes, to come out for protecting Americans, American jobs, and American neighborhoods, American schools, American emergency rooms? It's because the political class, it's a cozy little political class, as we've seen in my favorite scandal in a long time, and we'll get to this in a moment, the college cheating scandal.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that next.
And what I covered in last week's column, the Jeffrey Epstein case. Jeffrey Epstein was a huge Democratic donor, but that's another story of the elites protecting themselves. And I'm telling you, because of immigration, it is going to get more and more like that in this country as we become more like Brazil, and the income inequality widens and widens and widens. The reason all of Trump's immigration promises, and there were a lot, anchor babies, repealing Obama's unconstitutional amnesty, simply deporting the 60 million illegals in the country, ending the asylum scam. You sometimes hear the non-MAGA people working for Trump saying, oh, the wall is just a metaphor. Yeah, that's right. It's a metaphor that means all of the things I just mentioned, the entire pro-American immigration agenda, but it also means a wall.
Yeah.
So it's a metaphor in that sense. That's why they hate him.
Yeah.
That's why they're going to keep going after him. If he wants to save himself, keep the promises that formed this titanium bond with his base. And no one can lay a finger on him, but he isn't doing that. He's losing certainly a large segment of his base, and he can't afford to lose 1% of it. And he will just be dismantled by Mueller.
Well, Ann Coulter, let's get to this college admissions. Now, this is terribly...
Yes, my favorite scandal.
Okay, you shouldn't do this, but on the other hand, some Hollywood stars, they raise dumb kids. They need an affirmative action for them. For them, they got to pay for it. But these prosecutors act like it's the biggest bust in the history of the world. It's not that big a deal.
Oh, no. No, this is the biggest bust. I mean, I hope it just goes on and on and on. And, speaking of dumb kids who couldn't get in on their own, so their fathers had to offer Harvard a $2.5 million donation. That's Jared Kushner.
Okay. But it's easy for you.
I noticed this. Sorry?
It's easy for you. You're one of these geniuses that got into some fancy Ivy League college by studying hard. What about stupid people like me, where someone has to pull a string to get us in?
Well, for one thing, I think 90%, that was everything Mark just said was a lie. But taking the examples out of that question, we had in this country, we had merit-based admissions in colleges starting sometime in the 60s. Before that, it was really more of a social thing. Very few people went to college at all. But starting in the 60s, with the implementation of the SAT, we really did have merit-based admissions. You and I lived in that beautiful, halcyon time, and then the baby boomers had kids. Their kids were going to college, and they thought, screw this. I'm rich. Let's go back to being able to buy your kids' way in. And apart from the way it was done illegally here, often with these families getting off cheap, and I think that's part of the reason. I mean, you sit back and think, good grief, how could anyone do this? But then I've also noticed lots of well, let me put it this way. I think every single person I know who went to Harvard with children, with the exception of one, not one of their kids, all of their kids go to Harvard. I know a little about IQ. That is statistically impossible. But gosh, they've made a lot of money, and gosh, they've donated a lot of money to Harvard. So at this point, if you're just a really bright kid from the Midwest without connections, without wealthy families, and you're not getting any affirmative action for being black or brown, as they say, that's already all of the preferential treatment, whether it's based on your race, ethnicity, and I don't know why any race should ever be considered other than descendant of American slave. But now, you know, no, I'm from Mexico, let me in. And you get precedence over a white American. The number of spaces left for people who are just smart and trying to go to a college that suits their abilities is teeny tiny. So I think the whole thing is a scam. I'm really glad that this prosecution has been brought. There was another thing about college I wanted.
You know what was funny? Elizabeth Warren jumped in and commented on this. I thought that was amazing. She's somebody who conned a college to get her job.
Action bonus points, yeah.
How dare she speak about this?
Yeah, I think there are a few things her advisors better tell her. Just don't talk about this. Oh, I know what I was going to say. One hilarious thing is seeing, at least on some of your and my favorite networks, seeing the black and brown, as they call themselves, complaining about all of the black and brown kids who were cut out. They have to turn everything into a racial issue. No, Sherlock, you guys got in on another scam.
Well, it wasn't a scam, but you.
No, if you're not a descendant of an American slave, it's a scam.
But you'll admit.
We owe you nothing. That's just an anti-white program. I mean, affirmative action set aside for black descendants of American slaves. That's one thing. I don't think it helps in the long run, but that part is a utilitarian argument. My moral principled argument is if you just came across the border, if you just landed at JFK Friday, you don't get affirmative action over an American on Monday. But you know what, Mark? That's how our system works.
But you'll admit, having been around the Ivy League, that half the people in Harvard and Yale are a bunch of morons who legacy admission, somebody built a building.
That's what I'm saying. Today that's true. Yeah. It wasn't true when I was in school.
No, but now it's true. And
that's why I think the whole thing should be it's all a scam. It's dismantled. Oh, my final point on this. You know why college is so important?
No.
Because the Supreme Court made it against the law to give an IQ test for purposes of employment.
Oh.
You can give a 15-minute, like I say, I know a lot about IQ. You can give a 15-minute IQ test that is massively accurate, is useful for any job hiring. The only reason to go to college in the first place, and you know, it's that now they're living off the memory of what colleges used to be 20 years ago. It used to be you take an SAT test or whatever they take in the Midwest. They have that ACT or something, which is sort of a proxy for an IQ test. Plus you have your grades. You know, I don't think extracurriculars should matter that much, but apparently they do. You get into a college. So my recommendation to kids these days, since it is all a scam and colleges are, you know, $1 million a week at this point, is to get the best score they can get on the SAT, apply to a gazillion colleges, take their college acceptance letter and their SAT score, if it's good, from the best college they get into, and present that to employers, because that's all employers want to know.
Yeah.
It's a proxy for an IQ test.
Well, I hate to say we're out of time. Ann Coulter, your column comes out tonight. Is this what it'll be about?
No, but perhaps I will write about this at some point.
Oh, okay. Well,
'Cause I know whenever you write about IQ in America, the social justice warriors just love it.
Well, go to AnnCoulter.com. You can get her new column. It comes out tonight. Get the book, Resistance is Futile. Also, right now, Adios America, important book because it's all about the immigration problem. And just go to AnnCoulter.com. Make sure you follow Ann Coulter on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Mark Simone. Bye-bye.
All right.
It is now clear that Trump isn't waiting for a better moment. This was not an anomaly. It's not an accident. After he signed his third spending bill with no wall funding, which he claims to need, all sentient beings were forced to conclude that the president has no intention of ever doing anything we wanted on immigration. In fact, Trump is steadily moving in the precise opposite direction of what he promised. Illegal immigration is on track to hit the highest levels in more than a decade, and Trump has willfully decided to keep Amnesty advocates Jared, Ivanka, Mick Mulvaney, Mark Short, and Mercedes Schlapp in the White House. For all his talk about immigration, did he ever consider hiring people who share his MAGA vision? A diminishing percentage of the base is annoyed when I point this out. They think that the moment something comes out of Trump's mouth, it has happened. Yes, Trump talks a good game. He's like a waiter who compliments us for ordering the hamburger, but keeps bringing us fish. The hamburger is our signature dish, juicy and grilled to perfection. You've made a brilliant choice, now here's your salmon. If he refuses to do what we hired him to do, he's not getting a good Yelp review. I've decided to discuss the Trump presidency in purely mathematical terms. It's not his fault. He's trying. Never has a president been under such attack. These are more in the nature of excuses, not facts. Under my new approach, I will provide a numerical evaluation of the Trump presidency, which I call Trump by the numbers. No editorializing, no invective, no opinion. Number of miles of wall built on our southern border since Trump has been president. 0. Number of miles of fence, bollard, or garden trellis built along our 2,000-mile border since Trump has been president. 26. Number of times Trump has claimed on Twitter he's already building the wall. 16 by my count. Number of times Trump has complained on Twitter that Congress won't give him funds to build the wall that he says he's already building. At least 30 by my count. Number of wall prototypes destroyed by the federal government. All of them. Number of executive orders ending the anchor baby scam, as Trump promises whenever an election is coming. 0. Number of executive orders issued by Trump rescinding Obama's unconstitutional amnesty for legal alien dreamers. 0. Number of illegal aliens whose presence has been excused by Trump. 11 to 50 million, depending on whether you believe the propaganda or the facts. Number of extensions of the E-Verify system to prevent illegals from being hired over Americans. 0. Number of H-1B foreign workers in this country when Trump took office. Approximately 1 million. Number of H-1B foreign workers in this country today. Approximately 1 million. Number of asylum loopholes closed. 0. Number of top-level administration jobs offered to immigration controllers who are not named Stephen Miller. 0. Number of top-level administration jobs offered to members of the Koch brothers Open Borders Network. 5 that I know of. Number of attorneys general trying desperately to implement Trump's immigration agenda whom Trump mocked and forced out of office. 1. Apart from immigration, probably the single most important campaign promise Trump made was to end the carried interest loophole. Most Republicans would break out into a cold sweat if asked to raise taxes on George Soros. Finally, we had a Republican, or Democrat, who wasn't beholden to Wall Street. During the campaign, Trump said this tax scam allowed hedge fund managers to get away with murder and vowed to eliminate it. Americans who hadn't voted for 30 years said, "How do I register to vote?"
Listen, Ann, one of the reasons I love having you on the program, and I tell people that while there are times I disagree with you, not today for certain, that I love your writing because metaphors like Democrats treat black people like the wife who would iron your shirt for a date with your mistress. I mean, there's just, you are unmatched in terms of great metaphors. So welcome back to the program. How are you?
I love you. This is why I'll be on your show once a week for the rest of my life.
Well, I looked at this, and you're right. The left does have a dirty little secret. Because
yes, none of them, and I prefer doing it to them in person, but since liberals will no longer be in my presence in person, at least for a televised debate, and that is, it's always the ones screaming the most about racism. Start asking them where their kids go to school. And let me tell you, in New York City, you will never, ever go wrong. Oh, they will move heaven and earth to make sure their kids don't go to school with blacks or immigrants or Hispanics. But, oh, boy, do they get on TV and love accusing everyone else of racism. I was noticing it watching my friend Lawrence O'Donnell, whom I actually do love, but there is when he gets on the racism beat, it's just the sanctimony, the self-righteousness. And what's so outrageous about it here is as is covered heavily in my book, Adios America, the left is invoking or accusing others of racism in order to promote policies that not only don't help black people, but actively harm them aggressively, as we know from an actual civil rights icon, Barbara Jordan's report on immigration back in the 90s. It was endorsed by Bill Clinton. Oh, my, how things changed once the Democrats noticed that the illegals with their anchor babies becoming more and more with citizens, won more than a third of our legal immigration from Mexico. Hey, they're voting for us. So that's it. Carol Swain, a professor at Vanderbilt, I think she has an entire book on how all of this low-wage immigration, with, facts and figures and numbers, how it hurts African Americans most of all. Because as I point out in the column, right as American blacks had won their full civil rights in this country, and that is the only reason we have, we're very sensitive to the race issue because of the history of slavery and Jim Crow. 1964, finally the Democrats come along, full civil rights protection, and the very next year, Teddy Kennedy passes his immigration bill that will dump millions upon millions of low-skilled workers on the country. Right as black people have the rights, all the legal rights, now they just need, to climb up the economic ladder. But we're going to make it even harder for them, the Democrats say, by bringing in millions of foreigners to compete with them. It's just that the hypocrisy and sanctimony isn't enough to make your head explode.
Well, it is because, the mainstream media will never get tired of going back and finding an old piece of Donald Trump saying one thing or another. But I wish they'd do the same thing, where they would go back and reach back and get some of the tape, and we've seen some of it from time to time, from people like Barbara Jordan and from people like even Ted Kennedy. And there were other Democrats who've come out and said, that this is a problem. Even Dianne Feinstein. There's tape when you go back 20 years of her saying, hey, there's a problem with letting all these illegal aliens in to do the jobs that should be done by other low-skilled American workers instead.
Yes. It hurts all kinds of low-skilled workers, but like I say, this was just at the point when African Americans are escaping the Democrat policies of Jim Crow and should have been working their way up the economic ladder. No, we're gonna give you these blinders and some leg weights and here's a backpack for you. No, it's really hypocritical and outrageous. But that's the line you read at the beginning of our interview. Democrats treating blacks like the wife who will iron your shirt for a date with your mistress. Democrats know that African Americans will block vote for them. Oh, well, there's not much Republicans can do other than point it out and tell Republicans you don't have anything to feel guilty for. I also think it's important, and this point can't be made often enough. I really resent having having immigrants come in, I mean, as lovely as many of them are, and I'm talking about both legal and illegal, but piggybacking on the black experience in America.
Yep.
As I describe in Adios America, the reason we have set-asides, affirmative action, the reason we are so sensitive to racial issues, and black people can tell us you can't use this word and you can't use that word, it's because of slavery and Jim Crow. We didn't do anything to Mexicans. We didn't do anything to Pakistanis, but they're coming in and taking the affirmative action slots we're supposed to go to the descendants of American slaves.
You know, the other night I was driving home and I was listening to an interview. I listened to government-funded propaganda radio, otherwise known as NPR, and they were talking to a dreamer. They said, coming up next, we're going to talk to a dreamer. And I thought, okay, I want to hear what this dreamer has to say. And he's working at a college. He's working in the admissions department. He has a BA. He's thinking about going for his MA. So he's on the track to real success in America. And they said, so what do you think of this? He says, well, I think our dreamer status should be approved without strings. We want a clean immigration bill. And he goes on to explain, I don't want a wall. I don't want increased border security. And I'm thinking, you want to become an American, but you don't want your country to have a secure border. You don't want to lock out other people from coming in as well. What is it exactly that you think you're asking for? Because, as you pointed out, Ann, in your books, all of them, you've pointed out that this could be the death of America as we know it, and certainly the death of any kind of other party in this country to be able to win an election.
Oh, yes, it's the end of the Republican Party, which is why I am wondering what on earth Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republicans in the Senate are doing by sending Lindsey Graham as their point man on immigration. Good grief. I mean, the one thing, if this is the end of our country, the one thing I'm really going to enjoy is all of these Chamber of Commerce corporations who wanted their cheap labor and watching them deal with a government that is as friendly to corporations as the California government is. Good luck to you, boys. Really, I mean, it is Lenin's statement, the capitalists will sell us the rope with which to hang them. This is the most short-term thinking by corporate America and employers. They got the Republicans by they're the donors, and they're directing everything. So do not believe any senator or any congressman who is not out there 100% on Trump's side on immigration. If they're just sitting quietly acquiescing in Lindsey Graham, no, I'm sorry, they're collaborators.
Well, what's going to happen to low-skilled workers and mid-skilled workers in this country if the predictions about technology are right and that an awful lot of jobs involving human beings doing them are simply going to go away? What are we going to do with that population of people who don't have jobs or any way to make a living?
No, it's a good question. I think we end up like Brazil, which is the direction our country has been moving in, basically for 20 years, and largely because of immigration. You just get a larger and larger underclass. The middle class falls into the lower class, and a very thin but shockingly wealthy, very top wealth. I mean, there is a point to income inequality growing. It's one thing if it's just, when America was a huge middle-class country and the difference between the CEO and the postman wasn't such a big deal. Not anymore. No, we are going to be the servants to the Mark Zuckerberg.
Unfortunately. Her latest book is In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, and it's always a pleasure. Thanks for the time tonight.
Good to talk to you, Lars. Bye-bye.
Nice to talk to you as well. Ann Coulter. Back in a moment. Your calls at 866-439-5277.
And remember how Donald Trump was saying how terrible the violence and the exploitation, and it was a humanitarian crisis down on the border. Remember that? Right before.
Yes, I do remember that.
And remember how the New York Times and the Washington Post said that there was no crisis on the border, that it was everything was hunky dory down there. Remember that?
Yes. Yes, if anything, there are fewer illegals coming in.
Yes.
Which they came to by reclassifying what an illegal is.
So,
just by the way, put a footnote in that.
So it's much like the New York Times reported that there was no starving of the petite bourgeoisie in the Ukraine during the 1930s by Joseph Stalin.
Right.
And there was no Holocaust in the 1940s in Germany. So now Now, the New York Times, did you see the story, Ann?
Yes, I did. I guessed that's where you were going.
I'll let Ann explain the story. I'll just read you the headline of the story. This is the New York Times. Never mind all those earlier stories. This is the new story. You have to pay with your body. That's a quote. The hidden nightmare of sexual violence on the border.
Yes, and the article admits that this barely scratches the surface, the ones they were talking to. No, it's a weird schizophrenic newspaper right now because they appear to still have some actual reporters. Not many, but some of the old school shoe leather reporters who find interesting stories that people wouldn't know about, go and investigate them and then report them. For young people, that's what we used to think of as news and reporting. But the new generation, no, it's pretty much just sit back and write social justice warriors pieces to prove how much more woke you are than other white people. And yeah, their social justice warrior division is not really in sync with the actual reporting division at the New York Times.
But this basically confirms everything that that President Trump has been saying before he declared the national emergency.
Generally do. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I do not think it is principled at all. Since you mention it, and I like a lot of things about him, but for Rand Paul to be voting against the national emergency declaration, look, I know this may sound principled to the libertarian types, but I'm sorry, it is an emergency just because no one else was ever willing to deal with it. No other president. Compare it to every other declared national emergency and ask how many Americans were being killed by those national emergencies compared to this national emergency. I don't think this is principled at all. And for those of you who know anyone who votes in Kentucky, you should tell them to call and complain to Senator Rand Paul.
But, the thing is, you know the way this works. Sometimes Marco Rubio just has to come out and be a neocon every once in a while, despite, he does.
Once in a while.
Well, I mean, sometimes he's really good, like when they were trying to steal the Florida elections from Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis. He was on top of his game, but then he goes back and
that is the one and only time I can recall in my lifetime Marco Rubio being good on any issue.
Well, he's been, and again,
I'm willing to be corrected, but now that you mention it, you are right. He was good, and I remember being shocked. But I didn't think to myself, "Oh, it's like that last time he was good on."
Well, but Ian,
then I'm stuck.
And you have to judge a man by his enemies, do you not? And do you remember when Marco Rubio was framed by the New York Times when they said he'd bought a yacht? With it. And
yeah,
then
I
it turned
agreed
out,
with the New York Times on that one.
A yacht? That wasn't a yacht. That was a fishing boat. Half of our neighbors in South Florida have boats like that. Ann, come on.
If they used the word yacht, perhaps that was incorrect. But the substance of the article was that he was an absolutely ridiculous spendthrift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who isn't, though, really? I mean, come on, Ann.
You and I aren't. Do you
No.
spend more money than you have?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
He was spending a lot more money than he had. It was embarrassing for someone who expected to be president of the United States. But, of course, the most embarrassing thing, in case any of you are unfamiliar with Marco Rubio's work, I should probably explain where my venom is truly coming from, and that is he ran for Senate in Florida promising that he would oppose an amnesty. He had been kind of weak on that in the state legislature. I obviously spend a lot of time in Florida, know a lot of people, a lot of the talk radio hosts. Our friend Joyce Kaufman got him to swear on his mother's life because he ran as a Tea Party candidate, but in order to get the Tea Party conservatives, the people who really fought for him to win, he had to swear he would not support an amnesty, he would oppose it, and so on and so forth. He gets to Washington. What's his first bill? Amnesty!
Yeah. But like I said, but all of them have weak points. Like in Rand Paul's case,
more than a weak point.
In Rand Paul's case, he likes to be this constitutional scholar, and like you say, it's a way to throw an olive branch to to the libertarians.
To the nut libertarians.
Yeah, the nut libertarians. You know,
not
I mean,
the serious libertarians. Yes.
Yeah, the thing is,
Reed,
the pot question seems to be on the verge of victory. So the libertarians need a new issue now that they could get stoned all day and just drive to the marijuana shops in half the states, and in a couple of years it'll be all the states. You know that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I may write about it this week. I'm reading this fantastic book by a New York Times reporter, Alex Berenson, on the truth about marijuana. And I recommend right now, you won't even have to read my column, I don't know, this week or next week, I haven't decided. It's called Tell Your Children. And oh my gosh, Howie Carr. I mean, doctor friends, I know a lot of doctors. They've been telling me this for years, sending me, JAMA studies and so on. And I told some of them to get it too. This book is stunning. It is such a scam. This is all, well, I'll say more about it. But for one thing, your odds of developing schizophrenia quadrupled if you smoke pot, basically before the age of 30.
Yeah. No, I
mean, not that many people will get schizophrenia, but at least with a lot of other things, say smoking cigarettes. Okay, you increase your risk of lung cancer. What does that mean? It means you're incredibly productive for like 50, 60 years. At a relatively old age, you get lung cancer, you die in 6 months. Okay, everybody's sad, but you don't cost the government anything. You certainly do not kill your entire family with a hammer. That's the difference.
Hey, listen, Ann, I get in big debates all the time about marijuana on this show. I mean, because we have a libertarian pro-pot, generally a heavily pro-pot audience, and they say, you want the government out of every other form of your life, but you want to keep us from having marijuana. I don't want to stop any. If people want to smoke marijuana, they go ahead. It's a free country, but I don't think we should make it as available as it's becoming now. That's the problem. I mean, we've done with gambling. We've done it with gambling, Ann, and it has not.
That's a huge mistake.
Yeah, it was a huge mistake, and you
by
could
the
see
way,
it coming.
Wait, there are two errors in what you said. No, one isn't an error. I just wanted to point out, this image of like the laid back, Grateful Dead attending pot smoker. Oh, they're so peaceful, so easygoing. Oh my gosh, you say one critical word about pot. Both of us are going to be overwhelmed with people denouncing us. No, this is all about money. People want to make money. The pot industry, they're set to make a lot of money. But in your description of your position just there, you began with the statement, we're a free country. I would like to put a 70-page footnote on that. Oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. When they become retarded, and you do become retarded even if you're not schizophrenic.
Please don't use that word, Ann. Please.
It's one of my favorites. From smoking pot and are unable to hold a job or a decent paying job. No, Ann, Howie, and your listeners right now will be covering your health care, your food, your housing. No. As long as I have to pay for these slackers
I make
and
that
slackerns.
I make that same point, Ann. If we didn't have a welfare state, I'd be a lot more inclined to say, go ahead, legalize it, put it on every street corner. But you're right. I mean, once somebody decides to become a couch potato, and you can't tell me that there isn't a certain percentage of people who get into marijuana, especially now. It's a lot more powerful.
Oh yeah,
a lot more potent than it used to be. They're just gonna take to their couch, and you're right. They're gonna become burdens, more wards of the state. We're supporting 50 million wards of the state now, and 10, 20 million of them aren't even U.S. citizens. They're in the country illegally. I don't need any more people leeching off me. Dependents,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right, especially since I don't get to write them off my taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the difference, something you just mentioned, the difference in the THC from when you or I were kids to today, it's astronomical. It's through the roof. So I'm sorry, if you're over the age of 40 and think pot smoking is okay, you don't know what pot's being sold today.
All right, Ann, I got to tell you one more thing before I let you go. You remember the snail darter?
Yes, of course I do.
Well, we have new snail darters in Texas today. Lawsuit launched challenging Texas highway project's threat to endangered salamanders.
At least that's more impressive than the furbished lousewort. I believe a bridge was shut down in Massachusetts over the beloved furbished lousewort.
Don't forget the Plymouth red-bellied turtle too. We had to build a tunnel under a highway for them. But listen, there are two endangered salamanders in Austin. One is the Austin blind salamander. You would think if it's a blind salamander, it would probably have gone extinct millions of years ago, right? But somehow it's been hanging on. And the other one is the Barton Springs salamander. So does that just mean it's only
salamanders?
Go
they eat mosquitoes. They at least accomplish something. I mean, they're more valuable than Adam Schiff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Can you believe Schiff is still going on TV and saying that there's a documented proof of Russian collusion? He can't produce the proof. The investigation is now going on its third year almost, and yet he still gets to go on TV and nobody calls him out.
No, I know. I'm testy with the president for not building the wall, deporting illegals, or issuing the anchor baby executive order, etc. But, man, these Democrats, they are just ensuring his reelection. They need to read Resistance is Futile. By the way, you all need to read Resistance is Futile because all of the nonsense you're going to be hearing about for the Democrats for the next 2 years, that's all you need to know. People keep missing the forest for the trees for each one of these scandals.
And what's the marijuana book again? And who wrote it?
It's called Tell Your Children by Alex, I think it's Berenson. I've been reading it so obsessively I haven't really looked at the title page, but he was a New York Times reporter. It's stunning. You must read this book.
Tell Your Children. I'll check it out, Ann. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being with us. I'm Howie Carr.
Today, Undeclassified, how illegal immigrant amnesty could destroy American liberty. The story by Epoch Times contributor Trevor Loudon. Just before we begin, please remember to subscribe and hit the notifications button. There is no issue that will decisively spell the end of American liberty than that of amnesty for the country's millions of illegal aliens. Illegal immigration and the societal changes it will bring with it are more than an economic issue, a public health issue, a law enforcement issue, or even a national security problem. It is an existential threat to the survival of the United States as a constitutional republic, and it actually comes down to simple math. For years, the generally accepted estimate of illegal aliens living in the United States has been around 11 million. But a study released by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in September of 2018 gave cause to revisit that figure. According to MIT's Sloan School, the research found that the number of undocumented immigrants living in the country is about 22.1 million, nearly twice the most prominent current estimate of 11.3 million. Even using extremely conservative parameters, the study estimates a population of 16.7 million undocumented immigrants, nearly 50% higher than the widely accepted population figure. If given citizenship and voting rights, which Hillary Clinton promised to initiate within 100 days of taking office, 11 million to 22 million eventual new voters would have a huge impact on the future US elections. This fact isn't lost on the left-wing activists in the United States who seek to use the illegal alien population to secure a permanent progressive majority for the Democratic Party and their allies. Communist Party USA CPUSA leader Amelie Scheppers wrote a paper on immigration amnesty for the party's 2014 National Convention in Chicago. For decades, the CPUSA has been involved in the struggle for the rights of immigrant workers and their families. A central focus has been gaining legal rights for the 11 million undocumented, Scheppers wrote. We call for progressive legislation which legalizes as many people as possible as quickly as possible. We are for ease to access to U.S. citizenship. Former Illinois Representative Luis Gutierrez was for more than 20 years the main champion for illegal alien amnesty in the House of Representatives. He is a former leader of the Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party and an ally of both the United States' largest Marxist organization, the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, and the Pro-China League of Revolutionary Struggle. In July 2015, Guterres addressed the House on the power of the Latino vote and the political left. If millions of people naturalize, become citizens, and if we add to that the million Latino citizens who this year will turn 18, plus all our allies in the African American community, LGBT voters and young voters, environmental voters, women's voters, Asian voters, union voters, constitute a majority of Americans together. We are the new American coalition that will dominate politics for decades to come. Guterres' good friend, former SEIU International Executive Vice President Alcea Medina, is the undisputed leader of the Amnesty movement in the country. Medina is a longtime member of the DSA, a CPUSA ally, and was a personal advisor to former President Barack Obama on immigration and amnesty issues. At the America's Future Now conference in Washington on June 2, 2009, Medina addressed progressive attendees on the need for urgent illegal alien amnesty. Speaking of Latino voters, Medina said, when they, Latinos, voted in November, they voted overwhelmingly for progressive candidates. Barack Obama got 2 out of every 3 voters that showed up. If we are to expand this electorate to win, the progressive community needs to solidly be on the side of immigrants. That will solidify and expand the progressive coalition for the future. If we reform the immigration laws, it puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters. Can you imagine if we have even the same ratio, 2 out of 3? If we have 8 million new voters who care about and will be voting, we will be creating a governing coalition for the long term, not just for an election cycle. Medina exhibits no compassion for the plight of illegal aliens or sympathy for families being torn asunder. Medina doesn't speak of a nation of immigrants or the American dream. This is all about hard numbers and raw power. It's very clear that the left wants illegal immigrants amnesty for one reason only: votes. In 2012, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney lost his election by about 2.5 million votes. President Donald Trump actually lost the popular vote by around 3 million ballots. He won through the Electoral College. Thank God for the wisdom of the Founding Fathers, who gave America a system to temper the dangers of raw majority rule and the political dominance by large political centres and ethnic or religious blocs. Many states with high illegal alien populations, such as Arizona, Georgia, Florida, and North Carolina, are only marginally inside the Republican camp. Illegal alien amnesty would almost certainly send those states permanently blue. Virginia, once red, would also be lost for the Republicans. Even Republican stronghold Texas is very vulnerable. Losing only 1 or 2 of these states would doom the Republican Party to minority party status and eventual oblivion. How can the Republicans hope to counter 10 million to 20 million new Democratic voters, possibly as soon as the 2022 election cycle? Today's Democratic Party is no longer the party of Harry Truman or John F. Kennedy. It's now a party of the far left. At least 30% of the current Democratic senators and Congress members have ties to the CPUSA, Democratic Socialists of America, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism, or other revolutionary organizations. Many Congress members also have ties to China, Iran, Venezuela, and especially Cuba. Illegal alien amnesty would give the Democrats permanent control of the United States. This means a one-party state, soon to be dominated by the far left. Think California nationwide, with no hope of a turnaround. No political party should ever be given permanent, unchallenged power. As British history statesman Lord Acton famously said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Amnesty would give the far left in the United States the absolute power they have so long craved. Illegal alien amnesty is the left's road to the American one-party state. For the sake of our children and grandchildren, for the sake of the remaining free world, this can't be allowed to happen. It must be fought with every fibre of our being by those who love liberty. America, you must say no to amnesty. That's all we have for today. Thank you very much for watching. Please be sure to leave your comments below. And if you haven't subscribed, please feel free to do so. Plus hit the notifications button and give the video a thumbs up. From all of us here at Declassified, thank you for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Today on the show, North Korea and China is leaving America with little choice but to build more missiles. This story by Epoch Times contributor Rick Fisher. He is a senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, plus subscribe and hit the notifications button. So following the failed United States-North Korea summit in Hanoi, it is now crucial that Washington increases its strategic leverage in Asia by building a new force of ballistic and cruise missiles to deter both North Korean and Chinese nuclear blackmail and aggression. President Donald Trump deserves great credit for walking away from his finely orchestrated summit because North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, like his father Kim Jong-il, wasn't ready to truly give up his nuclear missiles. Trump deployed his personality and the prestige of the office of the president as none of his predecessors had to make clear the essential choice for Kim. If you give up your nuclear weapons and missiles, we can help you follow the success of summit host Vietnam, still a communist dictatorship but far more prosperous. So Trump's summit parade contrasted sharply with former President Bill Clinton's October 2000 dispatch of his Secretary of State Madeleine Albright for the then highest level official visit to North Korea, which turned out to be Kim Jong-il's parade and an utter waste of US prestige. Trump kept his cool, parting with Kim on cordial terms, hoping to sustain the limited gains of the latter's suspension of nuclear weapons and missile testing. But now that Kim has made a strong play for the US-South Korea alliance that deters Pyongyang, we can also expect that Kim will also resume pressure tactics such as testing his missiles that have remained under vigorous development. Okay, so let's take a look at missile development. It shouldn't be a surprise that future tests of the Hwasong-15 intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM may demonstrate a new multiple nuclear warhead capability. So Pakistan, Pyongyang's missile partner, could have already transferred multiple warhead technologies tested on its Ababil medium-range ballistic missiles in January of 2017. So Kim has likely sustained production of the Hwasong-14 ICBM and his Hwasong-10 intermediate-range ballistic missile, IRBM, which threatens Japan and may be able to reach US military forces in Guam. These are liquid fuel missiles that require sophisticated transporter erector launchers, that's TELs, or basically many-wheeled trucks to rapidly move these missiles to launch positions without causing damage to the sensitive missile components. So North Korea's large 16-wheel and 18-wheel TELs are made by the Sanjiang Space Group, a subsidiary of the larger China Aerospace Science and Industry Corp, also known as CASIC. According to Japanese press reports, US intelligence services have been monitoring the transfer of Kazakh TELs to North Korea since the summer of 2011. So Washington's failure to sanction Kazakh has only emboldened China. In 2013, China allowed its Sino-Truck Corp to set up a joint venture in North Korea, which is now making truck-based TELs for North Korea. So truck-based TELs made from Sino-Truck parts would be more suited to North Korea's expected production of slightly less sensitive and solid fuel IRBM and ICBM. So in its April 2017 military parade, North Korea actually displayed one of its Kazakh trucks with a large tube consistent with a solid-fueled ICBM. So it's worth noting here that China has repeatedly denied that it has assisted North Korea's missiles and has shown no willingness to take back its TELs. There have also been recent suggestions that China might hold North Korea's missiles as a step toward a larger settlement, and though fraught with risks, this only underscores China's missile relationship with Pyongyang. Perhaps it's now time to sanction Kazakh and Sino-Truck and call on China to take back its missile trucks. So, is US pressure the answer? Well, given the dangers of war, Trump's leadership engaging Kim has been a necessary diplomatic risk. But while remaining committed to negotiations, it's necessary to find additional means to pressure Kim into making real concessions. So perhaps the most effective means for building such pressure would be to use the US departure from the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Russia to actually rebuild US theater nuclear missile forces and introduce new missile defense capabilities. The United States should now accelerate the development and production of new medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles and new intermediate-range missiles. So the US Navy should reverse the 2010 Obama administration decision to dismantle its tactical nuclear warhead armed Tomahawk submarine launched cruise missiles, restoring this weapon as soon as possible. So US Army programs to develop new ground-based ballistic missiles should be accelerated, while programs which could arm US Air Force and Navy missiles with hypersonic maneuvering warheads should also be accelerated. Simultaneously, missile defense programs that would develop longer-range versions of the Theater High Altitude Area Defense Missile Interceptor and programs to defeat multiple warhead missiles require greater funding, much greater funding. So missile defense also requires the rapid formation of the Space Force Division of the US Air Force to much better defend the many satellites required for the success of defensive and offensive missile operations. And finally today, let's look at ally support, a very important aspect of an overall strategy. So Pyongyang's refusal to dismantle its nuclear and missiles weapons should also prompt Washington to approach its allies in South Korea, Japan, and of course Australia to offer new offensive and defensive missile capabilities that could deter and defend against North Korean and Chinese aggression. The same offer should also be made to Taiwan, which must deter China's growing threat of invasion and its thousands of ballistic and cruise missiles that are actually aimed at the island democracy. So in the event of a new Korean war, new Taiwanese missiles could help deter China from the temptation to start hostilities against Taiwan. And a larger US and allied offensive and defensive missile force will better deter North Korean and Chinese aggression while providing pressure to increase their interest in verifiable missile reductions. So what are your thoughts on what we've discussed today? Please leave them in the section below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Declassified for all the latest news. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.